You have been working towards something for weeks, maybe months. The finish line is close enough to see. And then, without any obvious reason, you do the one thing guaranteed to ruin it. You stay up until 3 in the morning the night before the presentation. You pick a fight with the person who has been supporting you. You stop showing up to the gym 2 weeks before the goal you set. You open your phone instead of the document that is almost finished. And afterward, standing in the wreckage, you ask yourself the same question everyone asks. Why do I keep doing this? The answer is not laziness. It is not a lack of discipline. It is not some deep flaw in your character. Your brain is running a protection strategy so old and so automatic that you cannot feel it happening. And the closer you get to the thing you want, the harder that strategy fights to stop you. This is the science of self-sabotage, and once you see how it works, you will recognize it everywhere. Let's start with the term itself. In 1978, psychologists Edward Jones and Stephen Berglas at Princeton University published a paper that gave the phenomenon its clinical name, self-handicapping. They had noticed something paradoxical in their research. Some people, when facing a task where they might succeed or fail, would deliberately introduce obstacles into their own path before the outcome was determined, not after failing, before the result was in. In one of their studies, participants were given a test and told they had done well. Then, before a second test, they were offered a choice between 2 drugs, one that would supposedly improve performance and one that would impair it. A striking number of participants chose the drug that would make them worse. They chose to handicap themselves right before the moment of truth. Why would anyone do this? Because self-handicapping is not about the task. It is about the story you get to tell afterward. If you fail after choosing the impairing drug, the failure is explained by the drug, not by your ability. And if you somehow succeed despite the handicap, the success is even more impressive. Either way, your core identity, your belief about who you are, stays protected. This is the engine beneath almost every act of self-sabotage. It is not that you do not want to succeed. It is that succeeding carries a risk your brain has decided is more dangerous than failing.
Think about what success actually requires. If you finish the project and it is brilliant, you now have to be the kind of person who produces brilliant work. Next time, the expectation is higher. If you reach the fitness goal, you now have to maintain it, and every day becomes a day you might lose what you built. If the relationship works, you are now vulnerable in a way that casual distance protected you from. Psychologist Hendricks, in his work on what he calls the upper limit problem, describes this pattern in precise terms. He found that many people have an internal thermostat for how much success, happiness, or connection they will allow themselves to experience. When life pushes them above that setting, they unconsciously do something to bring themselves back down. They start an argument. They get sick. They make a critical error at exactly the wrong moment. Not because they want to fail, but because staying above the thermostat feels wrong in a way they cannot articulate. The thermostat was set early. Hendricks and other researchers studying this pattern trace it to childhood experiences where success, visibility, or happiness triggered negative consequences. A child who was punished for standing out, or who learned that good things are followed by bad ones, or whose family system required them to stay small, develops an internal ceiling. The ceiling is not a conscious belief. It is a felt sense, a bodily discomfort that arrives the moment things are going too well. Your brain interprets going above the ceiling the same way it interprets any unfamiliar territory, as a threat. And when a threat is detected, the brain reaches for the nearest available action to restore safety, even if that action destroys the very thing you have been building. But there is a second layer to self-sabotage that is often missed, and it involves identity. Psychologist Dweck at Stanford University spent decades studying how people's beliefs about their own abilities shape their behavior.
Her research on what she calls fixed versus growth mindsets revealed something directly relevant to sabotage. People who hold a fixed mindset, who believe their intelligence or talent is a set trait, are more likely to avoid challenges where failure is possible. Because failure in a fixed system does not mean you made a mistake. It means you are a mistake.
For someone operating from a fixed mindset, every high-stakes task is an identity trial. The project is not just a project. It is a test of whether you are smart enough, talented enough, fundamentally good enough. And when the trial is about to deliver its verdict, the fear is not really about the task. It is about what the result will say about who you are. Self-sabotage, in this light, is an emergency exit from the trial. If you never fully tried, the verdict does not count. You can preserve the belief that you could have succeeded, which feels safer than risking the knowledge that you tried your hardest and it was not enough. Neuroscience supports this at the circuit level. Research by Elliot Berkman at the University of Oregon, studying goal pursuit and self-regulation, has shown that the brain's threat detection system, particularly the amygdala, can become activated not only by danger, but by the uncertainty of approaching a meaningful goal. The closer you get, the more real the outcome becomes, and the more the brain's ancient alarm system treats the situation as something to escape from, not move toward. Berkman's work suggests that the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive region responsible for planning and impulse control, can be overwhelmed by signals from the amygdala when the emotional stakes are high enough. In those moments, your capacity for long-term decision-making drops, and your brain defaults to short-term relief. Scroll the phone, start the argument, skip the session, anything to discharge the tension of being close to something that matters. This is also why self-sabotage tends to escalate at transitions. Graduating, getting promoted, entering a serious relationship, finishing a creative project. Any moment where the old version of you is about to be replaced by a new one. Transitions are identity threats. The brain has a detailed model of who you are, and that model does not update easily. When reality is about to force an update, the system resists because the known self, even an unhappy one, feels safer than the unknown self on the other side of the change. Psychologist Robert Kegan at Harvard described this as the immunity to change. He found that people often hold competing commitments, one conscious and one hidden. You consciously want the promotion, but hidden underneath is a competing commitment to not being exposed as incompetent in a bigger role. You consciously want the relationship to deepen, but hidden underneath is a competing commitment to staying safe from the kind of hurt that closeness makes possible. The hidden commitment almost always wins, because it is older, deeper, and wired into the threat system that operates below conscious awareness. You experience the result as self-sabotage, as a thing you did to yourself. But from the brain's perspective, it was protection. Clumsy, destructive, outdated protection, but protection nonetheless. So what do you do with a brain that treats your own success as a threat? The first step is recognizing the pattern for what it is. Self-sabotage is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of a protection system that is miscalibrated. It was probably calibrated in an environment where being visible was dangerous, where success created pressure, where the safest position was slightly below your potential. That calibration made sense once. It does not make sense now. But the system does not know that, because the system does not update itself. You have to update it. The second step is learning to tolerate the discomfort of being close to what you want. The upper limit feeling, that strange tightening when things are going well, is not a signal that something is wrong. It is a signal that you are in unfamiliar territory, and the brain is scanning for threats. The discomfort is not the problem. The reaction to the discomfort is the problem. If you can sit with the feeling for even a few minutes without acting on it, you teach the system that being above the thermostat is survivable. Each time you do this, the thermostat moves. The third step is separating the task from the trial. The project is not a verdict on your worth. The presentation is not proof of whether you belong.
The goal is not a referendum on your character. When you catch yourself framing the task as an identity test, reframe it as an experiment. An experiment cannot fail in the way a trial can. It can only produce a result, and the result is information, not a sentence. There is one more thing worth knowing, because it changes how the pattern feels when you catch it mid-act. Researcher Kristen Neff at the University of Texas at Austin has spent years studying the role of self-compassion in moments of perceived failure. Her research found that people who respond to their own setbacks with self-compassion rather than self-criticism are not less motivated. They are more motivated. They try again sooner. They persist longer. They take more risks, not fewer. This matters because the most common response to catching yourself in self-sabotage is to attack yourself for it. You see the pattern, and then you add a layer of shame on top. I did it again. What is wrong with me? That shame does not fix the pattern. It feeds it. The brain hears the self-attack as more evidence that success is dangerous, that you are not safe being visible, that the ceiling is where you belong. Shame reinforces the thermostat. What works instead is something quieter and harder. You notice the sabotage. You name it. You say out loud if necessary, "This is my protection system, and it is firing because I am close to something that matters." And then you do the next small thing anyway. Not the whole project, not the grand gesture. The next small step. You answer one email. You open the document. You show up for 10 minutes. The step does not need to be impressive. It needs to be undeniable, so that the system registers a new data point. I was above the ceiling, and I survived. That data point, repeated enough times, is what moves the thermostat permanently. You have been working towards something. The finish line is visible, and somewhere inside you, a system that was built to protect you is about to reach for the nearest available exit. This time, you recognize it, not as weakness, not as a flaw, as an old alarm ringing in a building that is no longer on fire. You do not have to silence it. You do not have to fight it. You just have to stop letting it decide what you do next. The door is right there, and nothing